We're going to turn now to today's storytellers, today's leaders, to ask them, what's your sustainability story? And I'm really looking forward to this, and this is going to be an opportunity for you to play along a little bit. And we've got somebody here who's going to help us, and I'll explain all this in just a minute. But before we get to that, I'd like to invite Chris Policinski to come up for a moment and just reflect with me. So Chris Policinski, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, Frank. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Chris is, well, I'll let you say it. What's your job? What do you do for day job?
I have a great job. I'm CEO at Land O'Lakes.
Chris is CEO of Land O'Lakes. Anybody know Land O'Lakes? What is So, Chris has been a great friend of this project for some time. Land O'Lakes has supported us. They've done the Global Food Challenge, as he has said. And I just wanted you to hear from Chris for a minute, because Chris runs a Fortune 200 business. It is a global business. And Chris and I have gotten to know one another quite well. And Chris talks about the importance of story in business. And I wonder if you'd just connect those dots for a minute.
Well, you heard it this morning. I think the importance of storytelling has never been more central to where we are at this point in time. I see this through the lens of agriculture. We're a farmer-owned company. Excuse me. And, you know, we've all forgotten what it means to be a farmer. I don't think storytelling was that important at agriculture when we were all farmers. We all knew what it meant to grow our food.
I mean, that's what this country was born on, right? Everybody was in agriculture once upon a time.
And even in my grandparents' generation, a quarter of America farmed as recently as my grandparents' generation. So again, if you had a question of where your food came from, you asked around the dinner table. A trusted aunt or a trusted uncle or a neighbor. You might have grown up on a farm. But today, less than 1.4% of Americans farm. They feed all of us and beyond. We export an awful lot of our food. And you heard from Dennis and Jim, the challenge. It's the grand challenge these farmers face to feed the soon-to-be 10 billion people on the planet with very limited resources.
Right.
Very limited resources. They can do it, in my opinion. I'm an optimist. But they need to be allowed to use the modern practices that they put in place over the last few generations. And we've got this great disconnect between what farmers do. Farmers are rotten storytellers.
Farmers are rotten.
They talk
Rorik,
about,
are you buying onto that?
They're getting better. But they talk about their business in farmer terms. Yield per acre. Things like that. They don't talk about how they grow more with less. How they really are using big data and remote sensing and lots of modern technologies to feed the current population and put ourselves in position, as I said, I'm an optimist, to feed the soon-to-be 10 billion, grow a lot more food with less resources. And again, you heard from Dennis and Jim how important that is. But to do that, they have to have permission. And storytelling is central to getting that permission from the 98%.
As I've said before, you've been to every one of our Planet Forward summits, and thank you for your time for that. Why? Why do you show up? I mean, you got kind of a busy job.
Well, you know, I'm stealing from Dennis and Jim. It's up to you. I can talk about the story of the past, but you're writing the story of today and the future. And I think it's central that we get folks from lots of different places. And I'm thrilled that we have such a diverse group here, and you're broadcasting, and you've got more colleges and universities partnering with you and a record crowd. Because we need folks who aren't part of that 1.4% to learn about agriculture and tell the story in their own words. Those won't be farmer words.
Right.
And that's the power of this forum.
So stories can grab, you know that. Stories about character, you know that. I want to show you one, and we're going to walk over here and come off the side so you can see the screen. This is a powerful one. I want to introduce you to this character. We talked, too, about storytelling for impact. This is a character whose short story is being put to very good use and for very significant impact. So take a look.
For more than 1 million years, I've roamed the earth, adapting, evolving, surviving. I stalk wild lands you may never see, taking only what I need and giving back far more than you know. I breathe life into the forests, and they breathe life into you. I know every tree, every rock, every stream in my kingdom, and I watch as they slowly disappear. I'm one of the first things your children learn to love, and the last thing you think needs your help. But my roar is fading. In your child's lifetime, I could be gone. I am no longer the most powerful being in the forest. You are.
This is an incredible PSA produced by Discovery for a project that Discovery and WWF are doing together, Project Cat Initiative, to double the tiger population by 2022. Why don't you come over here with me? Let's bring up the rest of the panel. And to start with is Beth Stewart, who's the creative director of Discovery, who is behind this. Beth, come on out and join us. Great to see you. Have a seat. Dr. Felicia Nave, she is a chemical engineer, a former provost of Prairie View A&M, and a STEM advocate, educator, chemical engineer, and a high-impact leader herself. And finally, Rorik Pohlman. Rorik Pohlman is the president of Pohlman Farms in Sutherland, Nebraska. He's a board member of the Nature Conservancy Water Board of Nebraska. And now, what, 10,000 acres is your spread, something like that?
Short of that.
Just short of that. So it's an awesome thing. And what we want to talk about here is their sustainability stories and how that becomes story. How would you turn it into a story? And so I'd like to introduce somebody else who's going to be part of this, and that's Chris Mooney. Chris, would you stand, please, so everybody can see you? Chris is a correspondent with the Washington Post. He's our correspondent now for the Post. He covers energy environment. Previously, he worked at Mother Jones. He's written 4 books about science, politics, climate change, has hosted podcasts, appeared on shows from The Daily Show to Hardball with Chris Matthews, and he's going to tell us, when we're done here, how he would take what he's hearing here and actually turn it into a story, or what he'd need more to turn it into a story. So, Beth, let me start with you. So first, thanks so much for coming in.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
It's great. Tell us about the tiger.
So, yeah, I'm glad you're asking about the tiger and not about me.
I'll get there.
So I'm a creative director in Discovery's in-house ad agency, and we are, as you mentioned earlier, partnering with World Wildlife Fund to support a global effort to double the number of wild tigers by 2022, which is the next year of the tiger. So my role is to tell stories to everyone out in this audience. It's actually a global audience because there's a global issue about what's happening with tigers. Many people don't know it, but tiger numbers are down to less than 4,000 in the wild. Actually, there are more tigers in captivity than there are in the wild. So what I'm trying to do is tell stories, raise awareness, use our platform, our global reach to make people like you care, because let's face it, you guys are the future.
And how are you trying to make people care? Are you trying to use story to scare people, to alarm people, to inform people? What's the objective?
All of the above. So the PSA you just shared is a little bit more kind of the traditional PSA. It ran on TV, it runs on TV, and it's big, beautiful footage, and that's Frida Pinto, the actor who did the voiceover. So we wanted to tug at heartstrings with that one and to kind of set the stage and put you in the tiger's footsteps. But then, as you'll see, I think you're going to play another video later, which is completely different tone. We're trying to reach a younger audience on a different platform that was run on social media, Instagram, Facebook. And so it's lighter, it's quirkier, but we still want to tell the same information, just in a different way.
I'll get to that in just a minute. We're gonna, when we roll this video, because there's a scroll at the bottom and we would be in the way, we're gonna actually get up, move to the sides, roll the video and come back. It's only 60 seconds, but it's really interesting and important for you to see it because these different forms are different forms of storytelling. But what are you actually trying to do with WWF? How are you gonna double the tiger population? What's involved with that if you're successful?
So we're already seeing some success. This is an ongoing program. It's actually a 10-year program. We jumped in kind of in the middle of it.
Okay.
So they are seeing some successes, but we're trying to, the funding, basically we're raising funds for WWF, and that goes to support rangers on the ground, enhanced security screening, security measures,
For anti-poaching.
anti-poaching tools, ranger training. An important part is community engagement to try to prevent human-wildlife conflict because, let's face it, it's not easy living with tigers in your backyard. So that's one way that we're helping them. But then the other, again, is using our voice, our global platform, to try to get other people to care so that they can speak out. And use, you have a platform too. Use your storytelling to raise awareness of this issue. In fact, I noticed the earlier piece on Sudan, the last male northern white rhino. I mean, that's exactly what we want you to do. Help spread the word, tell these stories.
All right, let's take a look at that. So, since we're now so comfortable, let's get uncomfortable. And Chris, you guys go over here, we'll go over here, and let's, when we're in the right places, take a look at this Tiger-torial.
That's our name for it.
Right? Tiger-torial. Okay, so tell us about, let's take our seats here again, who you're trying to get to with this one and why this is so different than what we saw a moment ago.
Well, definitely trying to reach a younger audience on a different platform. Social media is huge for us because we don't actually have a lot of money actually to do this kind of thing. I mean, Discovery's a media company. We typically promote TV shows. So what we do for Project Cat, sometimes we push out more on social media. And so let's face it, a lot of people listen to videos on their phones and you don't listen to the sound. So
you got that text.
Exactly, that's why this can be a silent
You all
video.
seen videos like this, right, with text. This text display is a very, very powerful, successful form of communicating with people now. And what's happening increasingly as people are consuming more and more off their devices while they're crossing the street, God forbid, and doing other things, right? They're either not listening to the audio or they're listening to the audio with other inputs, right? You're not just sitting in your living room watching TV the way people did once upon a time. And so this is a very interesting kind of storytelling. We talk about obstacles. What obstacles are you up against to double the tiger population?
Well, the obvious ones are there are so few tigers left that they're kind of hard to find and to film. It's expensive to get there. So there's some of those obvious ones. But then the biggest obstacle for me as a storyteller is how do I make it real for you in the audience? How do you, I'm hoping, there's no one in this audience that buys and consumes products made with tiger parts. So you're probably thinking, well, I'm not part of the problem. I'm not poaching tigers, and you're not part of the problem, but you can be part of the solution. So I just have to find ways to try to make this relevant to you and to help me spread this word.
Chris Policinski, let's talk about your sustainability story. What are you trying, we talk about outcomes, right?
Right.
What are you trying to achieve as an outcome?
Trying to enrich the dialogue between the 98% and the less than 2% around where their food comes from. That's the simple story.
And you're also working with farmers directly. You have this thing called Sustain as a company.
So,
What's that?
We're a farmer-owned company. So everybody knows this because of our butter brand. Thank you very much. But we've been around about 100 years, and dairy farmers did found us to market their output, but they also founded us to help them do things they can't do on their own. So we have an animal feed division. Purina is ours. And Purina Feeds. And we have a very large crop inputs division called Winfield United. Basically, it is a precision ag firm that shows farmers how to use seed and crop inputs to grow more with less.
Grow more with less.
That's right.
Less
everything. Less land, less water, less inputs. We use data, remote sensing, and in a sense, we're a high-end consultant to farmers with some modern tools.
And why? I mean, when you say you want
yeah.
less inputs, that's actually sounds like it's contrary to your business a lot. In fact, this comes up a lot, right? You're supposed to sell more to make more money. So why are you telling farmers to use less?
Well, I believe if we make farmers successful, agronomically and economically, they're going to love us and want to do more business with us, period. So if it looks like we're trying to sell less, yeah, but I want to get more and more farmers to come join us. So it's a good business proposition in my opinion. It also is central to what you heard about this morning. Farmers face this grand challenge. We're going to have to feed 10 billion people. And let me put some numbers around that. We're at 7, 10, call it 30% increase. Diets are improving. Great news. Africa, China, protein, better diets. Folks who study this say we're going to have to improve or increase food production by about 70% between now and 2050.
70%.
70%. And guess what? We've got 12% more land. Maybe half of that can be brought into production. And you saw the pictures this morning. We already have a water crisis. So we're going to have to nearly double food production between now and 2050 with very limited resources. I'm an optimist. This can happen. Why? Because it's already happened. In the US, we're growing 2.5 times more stuff with flat inputs from my grandparents' generation. And in our most productive crops, corn, for example, we're growing 6.5 times more corn on 13% fewer acres. So we can grow more with less when we bring modern business
We
practices.
talk about obstacles. One of the obstacles you've got is public opinion.
That is
Because a lot of
the
public
obstacle.
opinion says, we don't want big ag, we don't want big farms, we don't want GMO, we don't want you guys playing God, we don't want you owning all the intellectual property rights to things like food and seed.
You got it. There are no bad actors in the movie, by the way. 98%, they're not bad folks. They just are removed from what it takes to grow crops.
They would say they're not. They would say smallholder farms can do this. We
You
can do
know-
this organically. We can do it with urban agriculture.
There's too much or in that, one or the other. And if I could change one word in that discussion, it's and. Of course we need small farms to be incubators of the next great idea, to be entrepreneurial and try a lot of the things that we've deployed in a large scale. We started small. We need large farms to produce high quality, abundant, low cost food as well. So we need to be more inclusive. We need small farms, we need big farms, we need lots of different techniques and technologies.
Why do you care about this?
Well, as a human being, I care about feeding the 10 billion people on the planet. I think there's a moral reason that we should all care about this. If that's not enough, hungry people do desperate things. I think if we're not going to feed the soon-to-be 10 and the billion that aren't being adequately fed now, it's global instability that we'll be facing. So I think it's central to all of us, not just farmers, to think about where our food comes from in a much more robust, more authentic way.
Felicia, you're a chemical engineer?
Yes.
How'd you get into it?
By happenstance. I did not, I'm from a small rural town in Mississippi, and so the information provided in terms of career fields and opportunities was not as broad as including engineering. And so once I went to, my mother had a colleague who was in the military, who was an electrical engineer. And because I like math and science, he suggested to her that I consider engineering as a field. So when I went to college, I then selected engineering as a field. So that's why I say happenstance. In the 90s, we didn't have Google. We didn't have Instagram and Twitter, and so I couldn't go Google it up. So you just kind of...
Imagine that.
right. You learn as you went. So it was an opportunity. I enjoyed it, and so I continued to pursue that as a discipline.
And you've become a STEM advocate.
I have.
What is STEM?
STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
And why are you an advocate of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics?
Because how I started the story. I don't think... there are so many opportunities that are available to our students today. Happenstance should not be the way that we continue to educate our young and push them in directions for education. There's plenty of information that's available to them at their fingertips in seconds. And so providing more structured information, greater levels of access and opportunities was a career path that I thought fit with who I was as a person, and it was a way for me to see my purpose come to fruition in a career field.
And what is the connection between this passion and STEM and sustainability as we're talking about it here today?
They're all interlinked components that build off of each other. As we The issues that we've been talking about, you have to have students who are developed, who have the knowledge base in order to continue to push and drive the innovation. It's important for institutions to be at the forefront or be partners with industry, with private organizations, and making sure that we're delivering relevant information, that our students are always prepared and ready to take on that next challenge.
Right.
To move
You're at
forward.
Prairie View A&M, right?
That's correct.
And you were provost there before.
Yes, yes.
Tell us a little bit about Prairie View A&M.
Prairie View A&M University is an awesome university. It's over 140 years old. It's a historically black college and university that has been provided access and opportunities to students in the state of Texas and nationwide. Have a long tradition and trajectory of developing STEM educators, STEM professionals who've gone out and impacted the world.
And is STEM sufficiently diverse and inclusive?
No, it is not. A number of interventions, programs, good-hearted people who worked on the challenge of access and opportunity and increasing the number of women and underrepresented minorities in that area. And although we make some improvements, number-wise, we're growing in those numbers, but from a percentage standpoint, we still have a long way to go.
So what are you trying to achieve? What's your idea of success in life?
My idea of success in life is exposing to the broadest number of students and individuals the opportunities that are available to them, not only in the STEM areas, but looking more in a more interdisciplinary manner of how what they learn, what they know can advance our society, grow our nation, and improve our world.
Rorik Pohlman, tell us about your farm, what you grow.
We're in southwest Nebraska. We're on the Republican Basin as well as the Platte. We grow as many as 13 different crops. This year, the crop mix will be a major portion will be butterfly popcorn. And
You grow popcorn.
yes.
Do you
Yep.
pop it when it grows? I mean,
And no.
no, we do that later.
It doesn't get
But it's
quite that warm. But it does
Not
get warm.
yet.
We're going to chickpeas this year. We'll have a pretty substantial investment in soybean and yellow field peas. But we grow dry edible beans, so pintos, navies, northerns, as well as potatoes, sugar beets. If there's a demand for it or an ask for it, we try to figure out how to make it work.
Why are you involved with the Nature Conservancy? What do you do?
I've been a trustee. This is my second term in the state, and my original statement to that was I was their token farmer, but I really wanted to understand the language. I wanted to understand what the conversation was, and because I had heard, obviously, that they wanted to connect with agriculture, and they wanted to connect with the farmer, and everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to talk to us, or talk at us. And I thought I would take it upon myself to find out what that conversation was.
And how's that conversation?
Interesting, to say the least. There is obviously a lot of major across the nation efforts. One of them is the Midwest Row Crop Initiative, which started in the I-States as a result of some of the conversations in Des Moines over the city water and what is occurring in runoff into the Mississippi River. So Nebraska we're the #1 irrigated state in the nation by default because California has retired enough acres that has moved us into that designation. But originally we were not in the top 10 of contributing to Gulf hypoxia, but have recently been moved up the scale. And so in a farmer's world, at the farm level, that's not a conversation that you have, but it's not that we neglect or ignore those signals or those conversations. It really is a result of actions that we do every day. It's partnerships, it's research, it's extension, it's an awareness, but it really is a coming together in a conversation.
One of your areas of focus is water, right?
It is.
Why?
I sit on the heart of the Ogallala Aquifer, over 600 feet of saturated thickness. I ran for office, public office, as a state senator, thought I could make a difference at a higher level.
You win?
No, got beat by 125 votes out of 25,000, which is, it's okay, because I actually think I can do a better job outside of that rat race. Water, it's core, it's critical to my operation. We're about 80% groundwater, supplemental water, and about 20% rain-fed. Because of our climate, we're able to grow a lot of different crops, so it's very dry. We only get about 18 inches annually rainfall in southwest Nebraska. So we're about 3 hours from Denver and 3 hours from Lincoln, and so I sit right underneath a coal-fired power plant that needs water off the Platte system that comes out of the Rocky Mountains.
Notice any difference in the weather?
You know, I'd have to say yes, but there's a lot of factors. Irrigation has changed the humidity levels. When I grew up, we were surface water diverters in the 50s and 60s, and then with this avocation of mechanized irrigation, center pivots and gated pipe and all these other things that are drip tape, all of these things, it has changed in the crops that we grow.
And you use a lot of technology, right? You
Absolutely.
use drones, you use satellites, you use sensors in your soil. Has this allowed you to reduce the amount of water that you use on your farm?
Well, to set that stage, Frank, we're in one of the most highly regulated basins in the nation, in the Republican River. We've been allocated water for 37 years. So we've been told how much water that we can use or that we're have access to. And so as those have declined in terms of the expectations of less with more, how do we do that and meet evapotranspiration needs of crops that from when I was a kid, we grew 100 bushel corn and thought that was a heck of a deal. And when I got back into farming in '85, 150 bushel corn was a big deal. Now today's 300. And I'm doing that on less water, but I'm measuring it.
So let me just stop you for a minute. You doubled your corn production, but you're using less water, having doubled it? Is that what you just said?
Yes, and the nutrients as well too, and crop protection. It's a significant transformation of agriculture, and the conversation has led itself that we weren't measuring those things. I mean, my grandfather, we had hogs, we had all the pictures that were here before. We had everything, and I grew up gathering eggs and milking cows and doing all those things. And today, I manage at a very high level down to sub-meter resolution on my farm of nearly 10,000 acres. And we can capture that in real time. That feedback is right here to my iPhone.
To your iPhone.
I've gotten several texts already from my son that is broadcasting compost so that we're ready to plant popcorn here in about 10 days. So in real time, that transformation of data, but accounting for that stewardship, that responsibility.
Okay, I want to invite Chris Mooney up here now. Bring your mic. So Chris, and you all just heard everybody's story, right? If you were out trying to capture those stories, what would you do with them? Would you build the story around the character? Would you build the story around the technology, the idea? How would you make it interesting to me if I don't know them? I'm not a farmer. I haven't done this kind of stuff. This is what we do all the time. I want to shout out Boyd Mattson. Boyd, would you raise your hand there and wave? Boyd Mattson has been a correspondent all his life for National Geographic, NBC. He's around to talk to you when we go to our network working break, as is everybody else. He's an unbelievable storyteller. He can go anywhere and make anything interesting, okay? It's true. It's true. And that's the art of the storyteller. The art of the storyteller, like we like to say, is you can make a page of the phone book, which you'll have to go to a museum to see, interesting, all right? Start with the Great Tiger Initiative. What did you hear there, and where would you go with that story?
Well, with that one, I actually had a couple questions before I would know exactly what to do. Can I just?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I asked
Yep.
questions rather than give answers.
Yeah.
So, what is the number one threat to tigers? Is it habitat loss? Is it poaching? Is it interactions with people living too close to them, where people are going out and killing them because they feel threatened? Is it all those things?
Listed all three.
Okay.
It's all three of those: poaching, habitat loss, conflict with humans.
Okay, I mean, so I guess I would want to figure out each one is a different story, isn't
Yeah,
it?
they are.
So if it's conflict with humans, I mean, it would be really interesting if it was possible to find a story of a human who realized that it didn't have to be that way.
Right.
And how did they figure that out?
Right.
If it's poaching, I guess I would say, why are we unable to stop that? I don't know what the answer is, but
If I had that answer,
Yeah.
we could probably solve this problem. But Yeah, I mean, I do think you're right in that getting at the human stories behind this and going deeper and not just portraying people as villains in this situation. There's always a reason why people do what they do. So as I said earlier, it's not easy living with a tiger in your backyard. So, and tigers happen to live in areas where there are more people than anywhere else, actually. So they come into conflict, and you kind of have to understand both points of view. The tiger's just doing what a tiger does, and then, so anyway, I think that's a really interesting way in. And even the poacher story.
Well, let's put that in a place. Where would that be actually occurring? I don't know.
Okay, let's say it's happening in Nepal.
Nepal.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think maybe that's your story is there. It's
So I'm your editor, Chris. What's the story? Make
Well,
me
I
a
have
pitch.
to. I think you have to find out. You have to find people who are willing to talk, who live there, and ideally, it would be really interesting if you had someone who was not afraid, who stood out, and then you would explore why. But I'm just hypothesizing that such a person exists. I don't actually know.
And of course, this is
Yeah.
where pictures can come in, right? Through cameras, still or otherwise. And if you actually got some of the poachers on camera, some of these things that are happening, that
And-
certainly would grab attention.
Yeah, some of the funding Project CAP provides is camera traps in the areas, which actually, I don't know why I said Nepal, because we're in India and, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank now. India and Bhutan. And so, yeah, and sometimes they do catch, I mean, the point of the camera traps is to count tigers, but they do sometimes catch poachers on them too.
Okay. How about our next story with Chris Policinski?
So, I immediately latched on to what you were saying about the need to essentially feed even more people, produce even more food with limited resources. I think that's definitely the global challenge of agriculture, and the issue is how do you make it specific? And I guess one way that I'd be interested in learning about would be to ask, where is it that innovative practices that someone has created, let's say in the U.S., doesn't have to be, where are they catching on, or where do they need to be transported to developing nations that are going to need them so badly? And how is that? I think I would want to look for the story of how is that handoff occurring or failing to occur. And again, I would want to be in a place, somewhere around the world. That's my question. Yeah.
Well, I think you've got one example with Rohrig of a sophisticated farmer who's growing more with less and using data and less inputs, less of everything, which is a good thing. Safe, abundant, affordable food, big deal. But then I'd move you right over to Africa, and I'd pick a country that has looked at the social dialogue in developed Europe and the United States and abhors technology or avoids it, and focus on the fact that some of their population is literally dying because they are afraid of the technology that's so well deployed in other parts of the world. And it's fear. It's fear. The simple narrative there is, and I've had this conversation of why don't you use this technology? And the simple narrative is it's not good enough for developed Europe, but it's not good enough for the United States. Why would I use that for my people? That's a powerful story because the consequence of that uninformed view, influenced by a bit of food as fashion, and not enough robust dialogue around the great stories we have, is people die.
And so are you talking about GM agriculture, or are you talking about?
Primarily biotech,
Okay.
but lots of technology. Lots of different technology. There's a lot of technology deployed on farms that goes well beyond biotech that folks need to understand. And I trust the wisdom of the crowd in a sense that we just need to inform the dialogue, and it's not informed right now. And we need to do that in the developed world first, because the rest of the world looks at us and developed Europe for a lead.
Another thing, I mean, all of this improved efficiency of agriculture is also going to have to, I mean, theoretically, if you want to achieve the Paris Climate Agreement, it's going to have to occur with lower greenhouse gas emissions. So there's going to have to be all kinds of innovations that cut emissions in all different parts of the agricultural process. And so again, I would wonder about, where are those technologies? Where do they need to be? Where are they catching on? Why?
And then
What's
how you make
stopping
it, then, so gathering the information, figuring out what the angles are on the story, what you need to know is step one. And then step two is how do you make this engaging and interesting to people who don't already care about this? how do we expand this out to reach people who wouldn't otherwise be thinking or talking about it?
Frank, just real quick, Chris, to your comment, I think an interesting story in the making around a lot of food companies whose heart is in the right place around sustainability commitments, but are going to products that don't use technology, blank, blank free, put whatever that is. And how does that square? I don't want to say they're greenwashing intentionally, but the consequence is they're going to use more land, more water, more crop inputs of every kind. They're going to, in a sense, be counter to the sustainability story they're trying to tell. There's an interesting story there, is to call out food companies whose heart is in the right place, but then look at their marketing practice and say, this doesn't fit.
I think you have an anonymous source here. How do you tell the STEM story?
I really like the STEM story. I've sort of talked about science communication a lot, and what I think the challenge with this one in particular is, and I've seen it so many times, is linking science education or science investment. So that's happening in a classroom or that's happening in a laboratory, and actually drawing the connection between that and an innovation and a company and a product and an economic outcome. And I know that that's a complicated chain, but in order to be able to do that with specifics is when you really actually have sort of a powerful story. And so the question is, how do you do that? And I guess I'll ask you. I mean, there's many examples, and I know it's always complicated, but people don't understand the value of research, investment, and training unless they see what it's giving them.
You're saying you need a character, a human being in the middle of all of
Well, I
it?
actually think you need an outcome. You need an outcome, and sometimes the outcome is 20 years later. I understand that, and that's what makes it difficult. But you need to be able to connect all the pieces.
I agree. It's a highly complex issue. We have a number of different examples. Drawing on all of those different types of approaches to do the same thing and helping people understand the broader scope, the broader picture, and the greater impact.
So, Chris, what would you need to know to say, I'm going to buy a ticket and go out and see her and do a story around her? What occurred to you? What did you hear in listening to her that you think would trigger?
Well, you focused a lot on education. And again, I would say, what have some students done, and what have been the results?
Take a look at actual people and outcomes. All right, let's move to Rorik here before we go for our break.
So, Rorik, you said something that I thought would be a starting point. You said, in the farmer's world, that's not a conversation you have. It was about, I believe, runoff leading to eutrophication and getting into the Mississippi and the Gulf. So in this case, I actually think you were the story. Why are you different? Why do you have that conversation? I want to know what it is about what makes you tick, that you clearly have that conversation here, and what is it that needs to be communicated to other farmers in a language they understand, so that they would have that conversation with you. I guess that's so. It's sort of a how are you a bridge, and what made you that?
Chris, let me take it to water first, and just on my own farm is a public utility came to me and said, Rorik, we're hydrologically connected. And I didn't know what that meant. And the transmissivity that occurs under the aquifer under you, those are interconnected, and we have an impact on each other. We need the water for power so that there's 1 million homes that come out of this, but we're going to ask you not to farm. And we're going to have some type of an agreement. And I go, gosh, why would I do this? Why would I want to be a part of this? This is my operation, it's my family, it's my business. And now all at once you're going to tell me that you're going to intrude upon that so that somebody's air conditioner can run in an urban setting. And I was already participating in load control, that they ask us to shut down during peak power so that those air conditioners can run again when it's 100 degrees. And I thought I was already doing my own job. And as I start to put that together and look at quantity, timing, quality issues, is soil testing and all of these things that have occurred in our operation because we have to. Now at once there's this realism that there is, everybody else is doing it too. But why did it take so long? Well, it's economy, it's scale, it's return on your investment, it is all the things that we all work for. It's a business. And yet, what does that mean to the environment? What does that mean to your stewardship model? And it was natural for us to look at our operation and how do I leave a legacy? And I picked on water because it was near and dear. I'm regulated. They came to us, and I'm a stakeholder on the integrated management planning process for both river basins for the state and multi-states. And all of these questions are going, and farmers would come in there, and they didn't come. You want to know why? Because most of the meetings are when we plant or when we harvest. Most of the conversations are in the Capitol when we harvest, when we plant. And so those regulatory, those higher level conversations were occurring in our absence. And how do you engage yourself in that? It's been a long road to figure out what that looks like, to how to get there. And it has allowed us, though, to engage research, engage extension. And we had a conversation earlier is now this whole electronic digital conversations, we've now reached a peak again where we need to reach back into that research side and say, hey, this is cool stuff, but we don't need to hear about the whole conversation about the research. Give us the soundbite. Give us the 1 minute why you're so interested or why it's important to us for next steps. That was a result of that conversation about moving up in Gulf hypoxia. Well, we don't over-apply fertilizers. In fact, that's money. That's an expense. Why over-irrigate? You're washing the nutrients through the soil. You're evaluating your water holding capacities and your infiltration rates and stream flow depletion factors. And those weren't things that were in our wheelhouse.
So I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to play TV producer and say we're almost out of time because we want to move off to, but I heard something here that's really important in storytelling in all of you, but especially in what Rorik just said. And that is a lot of information. And you've got to sort through that, which is what you're trying to do, to figure out what's important. First, what do I need to tell people? What do I need to convey for them to know? And then how do I build the story around that? And a lot of it is character. I bet in all cases you'd want to go out to these places, to these people.
Well, it's always best if you can. It's always an investment of time and resources, but
Right.
you know,
There's no replacement for being there.
No,
Whether it's Camp 41 or Rorik's farm or visiting you, on campus or where you're going or seeing tigers in their habitat. Any headlines out of this?
let me think about it.
Okay, you think about that. So my headline would be dig deeper, right? And really think about it. I think a lot of it is character. I'd come back to character. We got some great characters here, and characters
so
drive
I think,
stories.
Finding places was an important one for me. Finding the place where it's happening.
And finding that
'Cause
element,
otherwise we're up here
that element
talking
in there that's new or different or
abstractly,
surprising.
yeah.
Right, absolutely.
Great.
Chris, thank you very much. Panel, thank you all very much. I'm going to invite you to take your seats, and we're going to go to break now, and I'm going to tell you what's going on in break. And just before you leave, though, I'm going to show you a 60-second video that was inspired by the Ogallala Aquifer and Rorik here. It was done by our Laura Whaling. Where's Laura? Laura's over there. I'm going to tell you that this is an Instagram video. We'll get to it in a second. How many views? What's our latest count?
Over 124,000.
124,000 views Laura Whaling's video has had, her Instagram, which I'll show you in a minute. We'll let you see that in a way out. Okay, so we've got some networking that's going to happen on the second floor. Also, you got coffee, bagels, fruit up there. composting from Veteran Compost, so your cups are compostable. Do the right thing with them. Drink from them, either eat them or compost them when you're done. Some information, stop by our Planet Forward Canvas logo to sign and take a picture, post it on your social media using our social media hashtags and all the rest. Network, visit our collaboration board to share a story or contact information to collaborate. Our team of Planet Forward backpack journalists will be asking you questions, and they'll be posting videos up at planetforward.org, so check that out. We've got lots of opportunities for you. There's a Planet Forward opportunities table outside, and information awaits. We'll be putting together a trip to California to visit a tomato farm and tell stories of addressing food waste. We're doing that together with Monsanto. They're also at the travel table. Planet Forward will be doing a storytelling expedition to Rome. I mentioned that. Vimlendra Sharon from UNFAO. Would you wave, please, Vimlendra? Vimlendra is here with us. We'll be going to the conference. What's the conference, Vimlendra? CFS. Which is all about what? Food security. It's a food security conference. So if you've got a story on food or interest in food, Vimlendra will be at the table, I think. Is that right? And certainly we've got information there, but go talk to Vimlendra or me or anybody else. We have a master's degree in media and strategic communication. If any of this inspires you and you'd like to come and join us here and figure out how to become a science or sustainability storyteller and communicator, that's back at the table too. Imani, I don't know where Imani went, but Imani's probably back there. She's going to have another trip to Belize. If you're interested in joining, that's a 4-credit course to Belize. She'll give you information on that. And the Middlebury College School of the Environment, which is offering incredible opportunities in China and elsewhere to study environment. They're back there as well as other opportunities. So check all of that out. We're going to shorten this. We ran a little over because it was so darn good, if I do say so myself. So we're going to ask you to be back here in 20 minutes. Can we do that, Dan? 15 is going to be hard to get people in and out. We'll do the best we can. Eat, drink, and pee fast. Hey, you know, we're all family. We can talk like that. Check out this video, 124,000 views.